Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And on earth nations will be in dismay. Perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves, people will die of fright, in anticipation of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that they catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times, and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent, and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. When you hear the words, new and improved, what do you first think of? They ruined it. There you go. Usually, new and improved in the advertisement world means that the packaging has changed. And that usually means that the packaging is smaller, which means you're going to get less of the product than you received before, and the price is going to go up. So that is what new and improved usually means. So every few years, companies come out with the product, trying to improve it, trying to get our attention, in one way or the other, trying just to get us to buy the product. And then we go and buy the product and we realize we are getting less of it and it just cost us more money. And so that old adage that Abraham Lincoln used to say, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. That you can only get away with new and improved maybe once, twice at the most before people start catching on what's going on with the product itself. So you're probably wondering, what does new and improved and product advertisement have to do with the first Sunday of Advent? Well, the first Sunday of Advent is a new beginning. It's not new and improved. It is a new beginning. And you might say, well, what's different about that? What's different from new and improved to a new beginning? A new beginning means starting all over again. Not just simply taking something and trying to rework it, but actually starting all over again. And Advent is about how we ourselves have been recreated, made new, through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the Advent season helps us to realize that by the fact that we have been recreated, born again, if those are the words you would like to use, we ourselves then experience the presence of Jesus Christ here and now in our own lives, as we ourselves live in the expectancy of the return of Jesus Christ in the fullness of his glory. So by the fact that we are recreated, we ourselves then are to be a sign of that new beginning for others as well. The early church did that very well. They understood fully why they themselves were an important sign to the world around them. Because the world around them did not know Jesus Christ. And in some ways we can even say that today. The world around us does not know Jesus Christ. So what did the early church do to announce that new beginning of the coming of the Lord? They themselves went out into the highways and byways. They themselves immersed their lives within the culture without allowing the culture itself to affect them. And so the way that they did that, first and foremost, was to appropriate the signs, the symbols, the meanings, the celebrations of the culture. And that culture, of course, was the Greco-Roman culture of the time. So the word Advent itself is an appropriation of a Latin pagan word. In the pagan world, Adventus was a yearly celebration of the pagan god of divinity, and how that pagan god of divinity was renewed every year in the temple. And that renewal of this pagan god in the temple was actually a celebration of the emperor who was thought to be a god. And so what the early church says is, no, that's wrong. Here is what Advent really means. A new beginning. A new beginning of divinity breaking into human history itself. And how that divinity breaking into human history was preparing for us the coming of the Lord. And so, in the appropriation of that term Adventus, the early church defined the season prior to Christmas and Epiphany as a time of preparing for the coming of the Lord. And in the way that they prepared for the coming of the Lord was that they read the writings of the prophets of the Old Testament, such as Jeremiah, as we heard this evening, and Isaiah, who themselves always were referring to the coming of God's great plan of salvation, and how that salvation would break into the world itself. In the very same way, the early church appropriated the major feast and celebration of the winter season, of the winter solstice, which was the feast of the sun god. And that becomes Christmas. They said, no, we're not going to celebrate the sun god. We're going to celebrate the Son of God. And so the early church did a wonderful job of taking the faith and bringing it out into the culture. Not allowing the culture to affect them, but they themselves to affect the culture itself. And so in the very same way, we ourselves are called to become that sign, that light of Christ to the world around us. For in lighting each candle of the Advent wreath, we ourselves are dispelling the darkness and ignorance that has existed in the world and that still exists in the world. And that each and every one of us are called to become that light of Christ, dispelling the darkness, dispelling ignorance itself, and bringing knowledge and wisdom and understanding, as we hear so wonderfully from the prophet Isaiah, as he himself is prophesying of the coming of the Messiah into the world. And so we have the ability then to help others to prepare for the coming of the Lord by we ourselves helping to build up God's kingdom here and now. By becoming that sign of a new beginning for a world that is yearning for an opportunity to start all over again. And so in that first reading from the prophet Jeremiah, Jeremiah speaks about that shoot from the line of Jesse. And that shoot from the line of Jesse is a new beginning, because the shoot from the line of Jesse is, of course, David, and the line for which the Messiah will come into the world. It is not simply an outgrowth of an existing shoot or branch. It is a new beginning itself. And in the very same way, in the gospel, we hear how we ourselves should not be caught off guard, because we ourselves have already experienced that new beginning. That new beginning that we received in the waters of baptism. And through those waters of baptism, we live our life in anticipation and expectancy of the coming of the Lord. But we just don't sit there and just wait. We actually are called to get busy for the Lord and for one another as well. To help others know that they have the opportunity to be able not just to be made over or in some ways improved upon what exists, but in actuality to have a new beginning. We are not just simply new and improved. We have been made new through Jesus Christ, who is our new beginning.